Welcome back. It is fantasy football draft season. I love this time of year. It's always fun to just, make predictions, do mock drafts and actual drafts and all those things. I have my first real draft tomorrow, actually, so we're getting there. Today we're going to do fantasy breakouts and league winners. So I'm not going to have guys in the first round. We're not doing McCaffrey. We're not doing Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry. Outside the top 12, which guys can be league winners for this fantasy football season here in 2021. So it's all based on ADP from fantasyfootballcalculator.com. It's half PPR, of course, those rankings. So I have 10 guys, I believe, 9, 10, 11, whatever it is. But hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Leave in the comments your fantasy breakouts and league winners for this season, and let's get into it. Number 1, I have Najee Harris, the running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His ADP, average draft position right now, is number 14 overall. It keeps going up and up, so I feel like at some point he will be in the top 12, but for now at least he will fit the threshold of being outside the top 12. He was a first-round pick in the real NFL draft. He was taken somewhere in the mid-20s by the Steelers, of course. And we've seen first-round running backs in the real draft pop off in their rookie years. I mean, transitioning from college to the NFL as a running back is, it's not as hard as like a tight end or some other positions. So running backs usually have success right away, especially the early ones. We saw Zeke back in 2016 have a great year. I think he was the running back 2 his rookie year. Saquon Barkley had over 2,000 scrimmage yards his first year as a rookie. Christian McCaffrey, I believe, was the running back 11 in his rookie year. Todd Gurley had a great 2015 year. We've seen guys year after year as rookies that were first-round picks have really good rookie seasons. There have been plenty of examples of guys taken in the first round and they finished as an RB1 in their rookie year. So I'm aware the Steelers' offensive line is not the best. I definitely get that. But volume is king in fantasy football. Efficiency is nice, but volume is definitely king. Now, Najee Harris is one of the few running backs in the NFL that I can see getting over 300 touches this year. He's also a good receiver. Not only can he get 15, 20 carries a game, probably 20 plus on some weeks, but not only does he get that, but he might get 50 plus receptions as well. And most people do play in point per reception leagues, so he'll definitely help there as well. And as for his competition, I mean, James Conner plays for the Arizona Cardinals now. He's out. Anthony McFarland, I mean, he wasn't doing much last year, of course. Benny Snell, he's never really impressed me too much. He looked a little better last year, but it's Benny Snell. So they're going to give Harris pretty much everything he can handle. And I know that taking a rookie running back sometimes doesn't sit right with people, but I think he's going to be a really safe pick, and he has the upside to be a top 5 running back in football. I made a video about my expectations for the Steelers offense. I am a bit concerned, I'm not going to lie, but I do like certain guys on the Steelers for fantasy. I like, Deontay Johnson, his reception floor. Love Najee Harris, of course. I think Chase Claypool may have a good year. So we'll find out. I think Najee Harris, though, is worth it in the back of the first round, early second round in this year's draft. My number 2 breakout player here is Calvin Ridley. I mean, he did have a great year last year, of course, but I feel he can be even better here. His average draft position is number 20, and the main reason here is Julio Jones is no longer on the Falcons. As we know, a lot of vacated targets. I know they brought Kyle Pitts in, but as I said with Najee Harris, I made the example before, sometimes it takes tight ends there's a little transition period for tight ends in the NFL, so I don't think Kyle Pitts will be Julio Jones right away. I could be wrong, but we'll find out. But Calvin Ridley is talent-wise probably a top 5, top 10 for sure wide receiver in the NFL just based on talent alone. And not only is he one of the best route runners in the league, but he makes big plays consistently, gets in the end zone a lot. We love that as fantasy football players, of course. And now in 2020, this was last year, he played 7 games. Calvin Ridley played 7 games without Julio Jones on the field. And these were the numbers he put up. He had 50 catches on 11 targets per game. Awesome volume right there. 765 receiving yards. Obviously, in 7 games, that's over 100 yards per game. That's awesome. A 30% target share in the Falcons offense, meaning 30% of the passes that the Falcons threw were going to Calvin Ridley. And he was averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So now if you take Ridley's numbers when Julio was off the field and put them over 17 games, this is where you get crazy. He would have 192 targets. That would rank top 8 all time for a season in targets. He would have 121 receptions, 1,857 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. You would like to see the 7 touchdowns brought up a bit, but we can handle 120 catches and 1,800 receiving yards for sure. The Falcons defense, as we know, is not that great. There will be plenty of passing opportunities. Bringing in Arthur Smith seems like a good move. I liked what he did with the Tennessee Titans. The Falcons don't have much of a running game. They're relying on journeyman Mike Davis to be their featured back. I don't know how that will go. So we'll find out. But I'm a big fan of Calvin Ridley. I don't really see a scenario where he doesn't have a great year if he's healthy. Of course, anyone can get injured, but if Calvin Ridley's playing this year, I think he'll put up tremendous numbers. I'm expecting, 1,500 plus yards, 10 plus touchdowns. He definitely is league-winning material if everything breaks right for him this year. My number 3 breakout player is J.K. Dobbins, the running back for the Baltimore Ravens. His average draft position is 23 right now. And I've definitely heard a lot of mixed opinions about Dobbins. I like to, take in a lot of fantasy podcasts and get other opinions and good stats out there from people that do it for a living. I like to consume all that and make my own opinions. So, for instance, JJ Zachariason, who does a really good podcast, I think it's called the Late Round Podcast, he was doing a video or a podcast about players to avoid. He had J.K. Dobbins on his players to avoid list. Now, he did say of all the players on that list, he feels the best about J.K. Dobbins, but he still had him as a guy to avoid. But there's reasons I like a guy like J.K. Dobbins. Number one, there's no more 3-man backfield. Coming into last year, it was Mark Ingram. He now plays for the Houston Texans. They had Justice Hill. They had Gus Edwards, of course. Justice Hill didn't play much, but Gus Edwards and Mark Ingram definitely split time there with J.K. Dobbins the first half of the year. Now, Gus Edwards, he's definitely gotten better as a player. He doesn't scare me. They took J.K. Dobbins in the second round. They're not going to bench him for Gus Edwards, of course, but I do think it could be a 70-30 split. I would put it in J.K. Dobbins' favor. Of course, Lamar Jackson's going to steal some touchdowns at the goal line and things like that. But I think from a rushing yard standpoint, J.K. Dobbins is a very safe bet in my mind to get over 1,200 rushing yards at least, and the rest is just, an added bonus. If he gets 8 rushing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns, we'll find out what the number is. The problem I have with J.K. Dobbins, they don't really include him in the receiving game too much. That's my one concern. I think last year he didn't have many receptions. They didn't target him very much. So that's the one concern I have. But, they brought in a good right guard, Kevin Zeitler. Their right guard spot was terrible last year. That will definitely help them. They used high draft capital in the second round on J.K. Dobbins. They want to use him and get everything they can out of him. And as we know last year, it took Dobbins some time to be considered the quote-unquote starter for this team. But from week 8 onwards, Dobbins had at least 11 carries in every game but one. That's definitely encouraging. If you put those numbers over 17 games, he would have had 204 carries, over 1,000 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, but once again, only 15 receptions. Now, the good news, and I hate to say that because you don't want people to get injured, but Rashad Bateman's been out. He's probably going to miss the first month of the year, it looks like. Sammy Watkins is out now. I think Marquise Brown's dealing with an injury. It's just Mark Andrews, basically. I think Mark Andrews went down too, but I think he'll be fine. I think it was cramping. But still, you have so many limited receiving options. Maybe that kind of makes J.K. Dobbins more of a receiver. We'll find out. Maybe they put Dobbins in the slot. He's a pretty good receiver. But only having 15 receptions averaged over, 17 games from his final half of last year, that's definitely not a good thing. You want to see more, of course, but if you play in a standard league especially, I think Dobbins is an excellent pick. If you play in a PPR league and you want to chase a guy with more receptions, I get that. But I personally feel that Dobbins is a very safe player with a high ceiling based on his rushing touchdown potential. I think the Ravens are going to have a good offense, as we know. They have a good defense. They'll be up in a lot of games. They'll be one of the top teams in rushing attempts. They always have been since Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback. So I think he does have a pretty high ceiling. If he does reach that 10-plus touchdown threshold, I think he'll be a top 12 running back. He'll be a running back 1, and right now he's not being drafted as 1. So I think J.K. Dobbins, when we look back on it, could be a good value. He may not have a Najee Harris type ceiling, but I do think he'll have a good season, and he's a safe pick overall. Number 4 for me is wide receiver CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. His ADP is number 34 overall, and I hate saying it as a Giants fan, but the guy is extremely talented. He'll be around for a long time. I hate saying it, but it is what it is. I think, he didn't get a lot of attention last year. Maybe because the Dallas Cowboys stunk, and maybe because Justin Jefferson put up an amazing year of like 1,400 yards. Maybe that had to do with it, but CeeDee Lamb quietly put up 74 catches, 945 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 20 last year with mostly Andy Dalton as his quarterback. That was a wide receiver 2 finish in his rookie year. I think, people kind of underestimate how well CeeDee Lamb played last year in a not so ideal situation. So the Cowboys offense, once Dak went out, was definitely the production drop for sure. And Dak was like really going to CeeDee Lamb a lot in the first 4 games they played together. I know Dak has the shoulder injury now, but I think he'll be fine. The reports have been positive in recent days about him. We'll find out, but things always change. Now, if CeeDee Lamb sees over 130 targets, which is very possible in my opinion, he's going to finish somewhere around the top 5, top 6, top 7 wide receiver area. Definitely a positive return on your investment. He's the wide receiver 11 right now off the board, so I think he can definitely outproduce where he's being drafted. And as I said, he played 4 games with Dak Prescott last year, but he was targeting him 7 times per game, and he had 14.7 yards per reception. So you've put that stuff over a full season. That's a lot of targets. That's a lot of yards, and eventually he'll get a lot of touchdowns probably. You can't predict touchdowns, but you have to think with over 130 targets and a guy like CeeDee Lamb, you're going to fall yourself into some touchdowns at some point. So I think he's the wide receiver to own on this offense. Of course, Amari Cooper had a pretty injury-riddled offseason. CeeDee Lamb's healthy right now. I think he's going to be a really good player, has a potential to be a league winner here in 2021. Number 5, I have Robert Woods, the wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. His ADP is 44th overall. We do the same damn thing with Robert Woods every year. He goes out as he's a 4th or 5th round pick in every draft, basically. He was last year. I feel like he was the same thing the year prior. Goes out, outproduces that draft position, and then gets put back in the same spot. Like for most players, if you outproduce your draft position, you get moved up in drafts. For Robert Woods, he stays in the same spot. He is just relegated to the 4th or 5th round every year. That's the way it is. I don't know why, but that's how it is in the fantasy community. But anyway, Woods was the wide receiver 13 in 2020, the wide receiver 17 in 2019, and the wide receiver 10 in 2018. But we're still drafting him as the wide receiver 15 here in 2021. I just don't get it. He's not the biggest name. He's not fun to watch. Like when you watch Robert Woods, it's not like watching one of the best receivers in football. I know it's boring. I know his name is like not the most exciting, Robert Woods, but still, like he goes out there and puts up like low-end wide receiver 1 type numbers every single year. He's a very safe pick. He goes in the 4th or 5th round. Like why wouldn't you sign up for a low-end wide receiver 1 in rounds 4 or 5? I was preaching this same exact thing last year. I did a similar video to this, and I was saying like, why not draft Robert Woods? It's a 5th round pick. He's gonna put up good numbers, and he was the wide receiver whatever, like 13 last year. So I don't know why. We're doing the same thing here once again. And honestly, I was not the biggest Jared Goff guy, I will say, and I'm a very big fan of Matthew Stafford. I do feel Jared Goff was someone holding this team back, and with Matthew Stafford being the quarterback, this has a chance to be a top 5 offense. Ever since Sean McVay has been the head coach of the Rams dating back to 2017, they've been, I think, at least a top 11 or 12 offense in every year, and that's with Jared Goff. Now, some people think the difference between Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff is not that much. I think it's a pretty sizable difference. I'm a big Matthew Stafford fan, so I think this offense has a chance to be very good this year. I like Cooper Kupp. I like his reception upside and touchdown upside, of course, but Woods has been healthier over his career, so I do prefer them. I think those guys are going back to back. I think it's like Woods and then Kupp is like right below him, so they're going close. And Robert Woods, it feels like he's been around forever, but he's still 29 years old. The age is not a concern for me. Just signed an extension with them, I believe, last year or this offseason, I forget, but it was pretty recent. And with Cam Akers out, they may pass the ball a bit more, so I'm totally fine if you're in the 4th or 5th round, especially going with Robert Woods and possibly getting a low-end wide receiver 1 out of it. At number 6, I have Raheem Mostert, the running back for the San Francisco 49ers. His average draft position is 54th overall. Everybody wants the hot new name. That's how it goes. It's Trey Sermon this, Trey Sermon that. And although I like Sermon and he himself could be a league winner by the end of the season, I feel like we're just leaving Raheem Mostert out to dry, and I really don't get why. He started out last year as their main guy. He put up 23.1 fantasy points in week 1 and then 17.7 in week 2 before getting injured. I think he got injured halfway through that game too, so 17 is not that bad of a performance. Now, Mostert does have some injury concerns, I will say. That's definitely the one concern I have with him, but the upside he possesses is really great for a running back 27 in drafts right now. I think that's a very good value, honestly. So We know Kyle Shanahan, what he does to running backs. He's made Jeff Wilson a thing. He's made JaMychal Hasty. I do like JaMychal Hasty, but he's made him a thing. Like any running back that goes to Kyle Shanahan's system, he turns them to gold. That's how it is. And I will take the guy who might get the most touches in that backfield. It could be Raheem Mostert. So Mostert knows the system, it fits him well, and he's a threat to take it to the house every time he touches the ball. Now, when you check the fastest ball carriers on next-gen stats, you look at the top two guys, both of those names are Raheem Mostert. He had a 23-mile-per-hour one where he was clocked, and then 22 miles per hour. He has the top two, and those were on separate occasions, so it's pretty crazy. So yeah, it definitely helps that San Francisco has a top 10 offensive line, and maybe Trey Sermon takes over in the second half. As I said, maybe Mostert gets injured, but for where he's going in the draft, I feel like it's worth taking a shot, because what if we get a season where Mostert stays healthy and is able to hold off Trey Sermon? I feel like he might put up incredible numbers, 1,000 plus rushing yards, somewhere around 40 plus receptions, double-digit touchdowns. That's going to be a very high-end running back 2, a low-end running back 1 type season, and you're getting him at running back number 27, I believe I said. Yeah, 27. So that would be tremendous value. Of course, it depends on his health, but if I'm in a draft and I can get Mostert at a good value, I'm definitely taking him, and he has league-winning upside if he can stay on the field. At number 7, I have a guy who's a wide receiver. His ADP is number 59. So what if I told you there is a receiver who is 28 years old, has an elite quarterback throwing him the ball, has a new offensive coordinator that wants to go up-tempo and run more plays, more passing plays as well. He put up 100 receptions last year, over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and was going as the wide receiver 22 in drafts right now. That is Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's a tremendous value right now. I know Lockett had a very up and down year last year. He was great in the first half, terrible in the second half, but with a new OC in place, I think we're going to see more consistency here from Tyler Lockett here in 2021. So Lockett, like Russell Wilson, like DK Metcalf, they got off to the amazing start. Lockett was the wide receiver 2, the second wide receiver overall last year through week 7. Then everything went south for him, and he ended the year very badly. Through weeks 8 through 16, the second half of the year, Lockett was the wide receiver 42. So he was basically not playable the second half of the year, but it was very hard to bench a guy like Lockett because he has weeks where he just completely goes off and wins you a week. He had a week in week 7 at Arizona where he had 15 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. If you can't win with that, you might as well quit fantasy football. So he has that potential to basically just blow up and win you a week. So that's why it's hard to bench a guy like Tyler Lockett. And I'm sure that the people who had him last year in the second half were greatly frustrated because he put up that monster performance and really did nothing like it the second half of the year. So there's kind of like a bad taste left in people's mouth that had Lockett last year. But even in the second half, when he struggled, he was still seeing 7.7 targets per game, so it's not like Russell Wilson was just not looking his way. For some reason, that just never came to fruition, and he wasn't putting up consistent performances, but he was getting the targets. And I'll talk more about this later as a hint, but I love the hiring of the new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, from the Rams. We could see Lockett as a Cooper Kupp type guy. I feel like, Lockett plays about half of his snaps in the slot, half on the outside. He will play both, but you will see him in the slot a good amount. He could play the role of Cooper Kupp, which could lead to more targets here. So I think we'll see more consistency out of Lockett, which was really the only problem he had last year. Overall, he finished as a wide receiver 1 last year. I think he was like 11th or 12th. So overall, he had a good year. The problem was most of that production, like 80% of it, came in the first half of the year. If we get a more consistent Tyler Lockett, he's going to be a very good receiver. I think it'd be like a very high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1, so I do love him as a value here at pick number 59 overall. At number 8, I have Javonte Williams, the rookie running back for the Denver Broncos. His ADP is 63rd overall. Before the draft even occurred, one of my favorite prospects in terms of talent was Javonte Williams. I'm not a scout, but when I watched Javonte Williams, I was like, damn, this guy is really good. I mean, his mixture of balance, agility, his tough running style, breaking tackles, even pass blocking, his receiving ability, he does it all. Like, I don't know why the Broncos wouldn't play him at some point in the season as their starter. Now, I know that, the fit for Denver is not perfect. There could have been better, destinations for him, but it's also not bad either. Melvin Gordon is still there, and Melvin Gordon, for some reason, I don't like Melvin Gordon. I don't know why. I think one year I traded Melvin Gordon, and then that was the year Danny Woodhead got hurt, and Melvin Gordon was really good, so I just have like a bad taste in my mouth about Melvin Gordon. But it's clear that Javonte Williams is the future of this team. And whether the future's in week 1, whether it's in the second half of the season, I believe that by the second half of the year, this will be Javonte Williams' backfield, and he will be a potential league winner. Now, Williams doesn't fit the criteria for a first-round pick, like I said with Najee Harris, but the Broncos traded up early in the second round, 35th overall, so 3 picks into the second round, trading up to get him. So definitely a lot of expectations there for him if you're the Denver Broncos. I expect there to be like a 50-50 split the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, but talent always wins out. That's the way it goes. And by the end of the year, I think Williams will have a kind of what J.K. Dobbins did last year, what Miles Sanders did in his rookie year, just take over in the second half, and it will be his backfield, and he will get majority of the work. But to make it even better, the Broncos play the Detroit Lions, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Los Angeles Chargers in the final 4 weeks of the fantasy season. Those are cake matchups, awesome matchups if you're going to be in the fantasy playoffs. If he's getting the touches by then, he will probably win people some leagues. So be patient. And if you don't draft him, trade for him. Like, there will probably be a league owner, if he's not savvy in your league, who gets Javonte Williams, expects him to be good, and if he's not good the first month of the year, send out a trade offer. Get him on your team, and by the second half of the year, you'll probably reap the benefits of that. So that's what I would do at least, but I do want to leave my draft drafting Javonte Williams. So I kind of foreshadowed this before, but at number 9, we have Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks quarterback. He was the elite quarterback I was talking about with Tyler Lockett. So his ADP is number 69 right now. Nice ADP. So this pretty much goes hand in hand with the Tyler Lockett love this year. Brian Schottenheimer's out as the OC for Seattle. Now they bring in Shane Waldron, who's calling plays for them. We know Russ got off to the incredible start last year. The whole let Russ cook thing happened, and he was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy through week 8, so halfway through the fantasy season until their offense basically fell off. But once again, based on the tempo, the change in philosophy, the different route concepts they're running, there's more pre-snap motion. I expect better results from the Seahawks for the entire season, not just the first half, not just the second half, the entire season. I could be wrong, but that's my expectation. So Pete Carroll, who has always preferred to run the ball, I feel like he had some say over what Schottenheimer wanted to call. He said he's getting out of the way of Shane Waldron and letting him do what he wants to do. The players have been impressed by Shane Waldron, so I love hearing that. If I'm going for Seattle, quarterbacks or pass catchers, I love the fact that Pete Carroll is getting the hell out of the way. Go worry about the defense, Pete. Let Shane Waldron call the offensive plays, and hopefully that we see a bunch of passing attempts for Russell Wilson. So we'll see how true that ends up being, but I do like to hear that. So I don't usually reach for quarterbacks. That's my philosophy as a fantasy player, unless it's a 2-quarterback league, but I don't play in those. I play in 1-quarterback leagues. So if I can get Wilson at a value, which is like round 7 or 8, especially 8, then I would pull the trigger, because I do think, like, with guys that I think have quarterback 1 upside, I do take them. I took Kyler Murray last year. I thought he had quarterback 1 upside. He actually was the quarterback 1 until his shoulder got hurt. And the year prior in 2019, I think, or 2018, 2019, I think it was 2019, I took Deshaun Watson in a draft because I felt Deshaun Watson had quarterback 1 upside. I think he was the quarterback 2 that year. So I just missed on both. But still, if I feel a guy has enough upside to be like the number 1 quarterback, I'm going to take him. And if Russell Wilson's there in the 7th or 8th round, that's when I start thinking, maybe I'll take Russell Wilson. Why not? So he's going behind Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert. Of course, I love Aaron Rodgers, one of my favorite non-Giants players. But, Justin Herbert is also an amazing talent. But those are 2 guys I'd take after Russell Wilson. I would take Russell Wilson before those guys. Of course, Russell Wilson has a good rushing floor still. Not many rushing touchdowns, but he has a good amount of rushing yards. That definitely helps his upside. And I think with them throwing the ball more, being more up-tempo, running more plays, they still have really good receivers there. I like the chance for Russell Wilson to have a breakout year. I mean, we know Russell Wilson's elite, but I think he could be a top 3, top 2, and even number 1 quarterback overall this year. So if I get around 7 or 8, I would pull the trigger on Russell Wilson this year. At number 10, we have Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. I almost said Nuggets for some reason. I don't know why, but his ADP is 86 overall. That's, the lowest guy I have on this list here. Jerry Jeudy is an amazing talent, as we know, and there's a reason he went in the middle of the first round in the 2020 draft. He's a very clean route runner. He's great at attacking the ball in the air. He makes big plays. I mean, for example, we saw some plays last year where he would catch a slant and take it to the house. Kind of reminded me of Odell Beckham back in his prime days with the Giants, just catching a slant and beating the safety's angle and just getting to the end zone. I think it was against the Chargers. He did it late in the season against somebody, but it was very not many receivers are doing that is what I'm trying to say. But the average air yards on Jeudy's targets last year was 13.9, which was top 15 in the NFL. And that includes some of the big play only type guys like Henry Ruggs, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, Nelson Aguilar, Jalen Guyton. So the only like elite receivers and guys like near the top that had more air yards per target were Calvin Ridley and Odell Beckham. And if you want to put DJ Chark in there, go ahead, but he's not elite in my mind. I fell for that guy last year, not doing it again. But if you're an active Instagram or Twitter person, I'm sure you've seen the compilation of Jerry Jeudy torching his man on defense and then Drew Lock completely missing him. This guy can get open. Like, he's a very good receiver. I know Jeudy had some drops last year, some concentration drops, but it's not really a big deal to me. He'll fix that stuff. But I know Lock is still there. I know he's still his quarterback, but there is a chance for a year 3 breakout or improvement. Drew Lock looked amazing in the first game at Minnesota in the preseason, so maybe that continues. And even if he's bad, they have Teddy Bridgewater. So it's not, not all hope is lost here. Bridgewater is your average journeyman quarterback, but he did find a way last year to support 3 top 25 receivers: Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I know that Curtis Samuel, some of that came through the rushing department, but still, he's a wide receiver. So that was impressive for Teddy Bridgewater. He can sustain a good wide receiver. So if Jerry Jeudy does in fact break out, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is not going to bring him down. Would he be better in a different offense? Like if you switched him with Calvin Ridley, if you put Jerry Jeudy in Calvin Ridley's situation, I'd probably take Jeudy in the top 3 or 4 rounds, but he's just not in the best situation. So we'll find out if Drew Lock can break out or if they have to settle for Teddy Bridgewater, but still, I think he'll be fine regardless. And he didn't have CeeDee Lamb type production, but Jerry Jeudy had over 850 receiving yards as a rookie, and nobody wants to talk about it. I know last year he kind of got lucky in a way because Courtland Sutton was out most of the year, or basically all the year, and he probably got more targets as a result, but that's a lot to put on the rookie's plate for a quarterback that just was not that good last year in Drew Lock. But I love Jerry Jeudy as a talent. I always want to draft talented players and hope that it works out. Sometimes you draft for volume, sometimes you draft good players and hope they end up paying off. So that's what I'm going to do with Jerry Jeudy. I'll take him in the 8th round or so, and hopefully he breaks out and ends up being a great player. I think it's definitely a possibility. So that'll do it for this video. First fantasy video of the year. As I said, I love doing these. I want to get to an avoid list, a bust list. I'll put that in the same tier. I'll put sleepers list out there, bold predictions, maybe some other type of videos if you guys want them. But yeah, I want to do some other fantasy videos in the coming days. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video or not. Hopefully you guys did, and I'll talk to you guys next time.